Hi students, our study is about function. We're going to talk about when we have a function, if it's one-to-one and onto, and we're going to talk about domain and range. First of all, what is a function? A function is a relation between initial set and final set. So this is the initial set and the final set, such that we cannot have a duplicate. For example, a point in the x-axis, you cannot have it more than one point. And here you have one that correspond a, 2, 3, 3 alpha, so this is a function. Here also it's minus 2 till 3, 3 till 5, but since 4 doesn't have any image, so we say it's not a function, and you cannot have more than one, as we said. For example, minus 2 till 1 and minus 2 till a, so we have a duplicate or triplet or whatever, so it's not a function. It means for every x here you have it, you must have one and only one, at most one image. You cannot have more than one image. So more example, if you have like this, for example, this is not a function. Why? Because from this point you have more than one. But you can have the opposite. Yani, this one you may have this one here. You may have this image here. You may have why? Because here this image, suppose this is A, suppose this is B, and suppose this is C. A has only one image, suppose it's alpha. B has only one image alpha. C has only one image alpha. However, for example, here, suppose this is A, you cannot have more than one. A has one, has two, and has a three, so this is not a function. And you cannot have from the initial set one with no image, for example, like here. So this is not a function. So always, to be a function, for every x here you must have at most one and only one image. So this is a function because one with a, two with three, three with alpha. This is not a function because 4 is missing, it doesn't have an image. Here, because you have from minus 2 you have to more than one, so this is not a function. Graphically, it means if you draw a vertical line, it must cut in one and only one point. So this is a function. Here, this is not a function. Why? Because you have more than one point of intersection. Here, this is a function till now, but here, if you draw, you have this whole vertical line, infinitely many point of intersection. So this is not a function. Okay, it means for every x you must have only one y. So here, if you take this one with 2, minus 2 with 2, 3 it has only 1, minus 3 it has only 1, 5 it has 1, 0. So if you want to graph it, you have 1 with 2, minus 2 with 2, 3 with 3, minus 3 with 2, and the last one 5 with 0. So everyone has only one. This is a function. However, in this one here you have one with minus 2 and one with minus 5, so this is not a function. You have one, you have image minus 2, and you have one with image minus 5. So this is not a function because you have the same x with two different y. One thing here, if you want to talk about, for example, domain is 1, minus 2, 3, minus 3, 5. Range is 2, 3, and 0. Here domain is 1, minus 2, 3, 1, 5. And range is the y. Here, if you want to talk about domain, suppose you have it like this up till infinity. The domain here, it starts, if you project on the x-axis, the arrow will be here, and this arrow will be here. So it's all x, the domain, and the range will be all y. Anyway, we're going to talk about domain and range when we're going to start by the graphing. هلا one-to-one or called injective. A function is said one-to-one if for every y you have at most one x. For every y you have at most one x. It must be first of all a function. This is a function. For every y you have one x. For every y you have at most one x. For every y you have at most x. This is also a function. 5 you have 3, 3 you have minus 2, d you have 6, so it's a one-to-one. Here this is a function because we don't have duplicate for the initial, but this is not one-to-one. Why? Because the point A here you have only 1 5 and you have a 5 and you have a 3. So to be one-to-one, all y you must have one image in x. You cannot have a duplicate on the y. For function, don't we're not going to mix things here. To be a function, you cannot have duplicate. This is not a function, so we cannot talk about one-to-one. For this is a function. This is a function y because everyone, but this is not one-to-one. Why? To be one-to-one on in y also you must not have a duplicate, vice versa. So to be one-to-one, it's from its word one to one, one to one, one to one, one to one. You may have here one is empty in y with no image, it doesn't matter. So this is one-to-one. So here, first of all, this is a function. Why? Because if you draw uh, a vertical line, you have one point of intersection. For one-to-one, if you draw a horizontal line, at most one point of intersection. You have at most one at most one. So this is one-to-one. Here it's a function. Why? If you draw a vertical line, it's one. We have one point of intersection. Not one-to-one because if you draw a vertical line, sorry, here vertical line, it is a function. But if you draw a horizontal line, you have at most one, more than one point of intersection. Since you have more than one point of intersection, so this is not one-to-one. So this is not one-to-one. Here, if you draw a vertical line, it doesn't matter. You have one, at most one point of intersection. So this is a function. But if you draw a horizontal line, you have more than one point of intersection, so it's not one-to-one, but it's a function. Here, first of all, this is a function, as you can see, if you draw here, but not one-to-one, because if you draw here, you have more than one point of intersection. Here, it is a function, it doesn't matter, and if you draw a horizontal line, you have at most one point of intersection, so this is one-to-one. It's a function and one-to-one. Here, this is a function, but here if you see you have a horizontal line, so if you draw it here a horizontal line, you have more than one point of intersection, you have infinitely, so not one-to-one. So let us check here to see, first of all, if it's a function you must have all x's different. So okay, to be one-to-one, all y must be different. Here you have two same y, so not one-to-one. Here 1 minus 2 3 minus 1 5, this is a function. Y must be all different, minus 2 5 3 minus 5 0, so all different, so it's 1 to 1. Onto, what does it mean? You must not have an empty in y only. You must not have an empty here. 1 to 1 and onto, because 1 to 1. Here 1 to 1, but I have this e here empty, so not onto. Here all are filled, but this is not 1 to 1, as you can see, because I have duplicate here, and you don't have empty, so onto. So now we're going to start. I gave you the domain, so we can talk about range. Once you have a domain here, it means you have from minus infinity till infinity. First of all, is it a function? If you draw a vertical line, you have one point of intersection. If you draw a horizontal line, you have only one point. So this is function 1 to 1. Onto, you cannot have, if you draw a horizontal line, you cannot have void. You cannot have void. So if you draw here horizontal line, minimum you must have one point. Minimum for onto, minimum 1 point. So it's 1 to 1 and onto. Here it's a function, as you can see. It's a function, not 1 to 1. Why? Because if you draw a horizontal line, you have more than 1 point. And for onto, you must have at least 1 point. So I have at least 1 point. You don't have void in this curve. So function, not 1 to 1, but onto. Here it's a function. It's not a function. If you draw a vertical line here, listen guys, if you draw a vertical line, you have more than 1 point of intersection. I forgot to talk about the domain, the range. The range here, you can see it goes down, it goes up. If you project on the y-axis, this arrow will be up and this arrow will be down. So range here, y belong to R, everything. Here the range, if you project on the y-axis, the minimum, suppose this is 0.5, up till these two arrows, it will be up, it goes up from both sides, from 0.5 till infinity, the range. This is called range, the y. Here, not a function. If you want to talk about the range, it starts from 0. If you project the curve on the y-axis, from 0 up till infinity, because it goes up. Elevation. Range is the elevation for, so it's from 0 till infinity. But since it's not a function, why not a function, as we said? Because if you draw here a vertical line, you have more than one point. You have this point here and you have a point here, so we cannot talk about one-to-one and onto. Here we're going to start from one close, so you must include the one. First of all, if you draw a vertical line here, you have one point of intersection. If you draw a horizontal line, you have here more than one point here. So function, not one-to-one. Is it onto? Let us see if it's onto. It's one must be included, but you can see if you draw, always you have here a minimum one point. It will cut it in minimum one point. But here, because one is a close, so if you draw a horizontal line at 1 here, at y equal to 4 here, you don't have a point here, you don't have intersection, so not one to one, not onto. So this is not onto and not one-to-one because you have more than one point. For onto, you must have at least one point. However, here it's the same. Here you have -1, sorry. Here it's a function, as you can see. If you draw this horizontal line, you have the maximum one point. But since it's open, so we cannot include this point here. So it's onto. Why? If it's closed in -1, it is not onto. But it's open. I'm not going to include it. So it is onto. Why? Because the point here is not included. So if I want to put the range here, y belong, minimum point of the y here is at 1, and maximum point, suppose this it goes up, maximum point is at infinity elevation. Here, suppose it goes down. So here it starts y from open 3 till -infinity, or vice versa, -infinity till 3. Here, this is a function, as you can see. One-to-one, I have this problem here because you have more than one point of intersection, so not one-to-one. And onto y, because I want the domain from -infinity. Let me delete. Suppose I want it from -infinity, I want it till +infinity, everything. So as you can see here, if you draw, you have minimum one point, so it's onto. You have minimum one point, it's onto. So here I have everything from -infinity till infinity. First of all, this is a function because if you draw here, you have a point here, but here is void. This is, it's okay till here one-to-one, but I have the problem here. You have this point and that point, so not one-to-one. Is it onto? Maximum, minimum, you must have one point. Here I have the problem here. If you draw a line here, it's empty, so not onto. This is a function. It's one-to-one because maximum one point, but I have a problem here. If you draw a line, you don't have a point of intersection, so not onto. Here it's not onto also. Not onto. This is a function 100%, but it's not one-to-one. Not one-to-one. Why? Because if you draw like here, you have more than one point of intersection. And concerning the range, let me put the range. So here from -y, it's from, it goes up and here goes down. So from -infinity till infinity. Here also from -infinity till infinity. And the last one, y belong from 0 closed, y it start till infinity open. So this is very simple to know if a function, if it's a function one-to-one or onto. Thank you for listening.